the newspapers have been saying around the world. And we've got our Nicholas Rushworth with us here on the set. Hi, Nick.
Hi, Jeannie.
Let's start with the Wall Street Journal.
Well, the Wall Street Journal this Monday is leading on its front page in its European edition with that whole question of the horrific violence we're seeing from the Islamic State organisation. There you can see the headline, "The UK vows to destroy Islamic State." Now, this is after the militant group killed a British hostage, as we've been hearing about. That article explains that at this point, David Cameron, the British Prime Minister, is not thinking of recalling Parliament. It's in recess in the UK till mid-October. Britain, of course, reeling from the death of this hostage, David Haines. And there is another hostage, also an aid worker, whose life is being threatened, horrifically enough.
Now, the UK is taking part in the conference that's on now today in Paris, this Security and Peace Conference for Iraq. Some 30 countries are there, and one country that you took a look at in particular is Australia.
Well, Australia has really come to the fore, reacting very swiftly to calls from President Obama to contribute to an international coalition. Here we can see the Sydney Morning Herald with the headline, "War on Death Cult." Now, that word, death cult, there is actually a quote from the Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott, who says the Islamic State organisation does not simply represent evil, it is exulting in evil. And to fight, Australia says it will deploy 8 fighter jets and 600 personnel. So that really very strong from Australia. More broadly in the press, I was struck by one piece that perhaps you will be struck by it as well, and it was in the Washington Post, which is really talking against the wind here about what we're thinking about the Islamic State. Look at that headline. "The Islamic State threat is overstated." Now, that's an opinion piece in the Washington Post arguing that, well, it's so barbaric, it will never form a base of support in terms of a mass population. Yes, it's instilled fear in everyone, and that's a good reason for Obama to step back and not get involved militarily. Instead, what he should do is organize diplomatic efforts in the region and get all the regional players to carry out military action. So a strong opinion piece there in the Washington Post this Monday.
All right, Nick, let's take a look at another big story today, that ongoing crisis surrounding the outbreak of Ebola. And you took a closer look at the Liberian press.
Well, there's the Liberian paper, the Daily Observer, which has its most read article is frightening, talking about AIDS and Ebola being the cause of American scientists. So a scaremongering story there. But another highly read, most popular paper article in that paper is "The Fight is Lost" there, which is also very bleak. And that's based on a story, an interview with the German virologist. His name is Jonas Schmidt-Chanasit, and he has said that all of the efforts to fight Ebola should have been carried out back in May and June. It's now too late, and that up to 5 million people in Liberia and Sierra Leone could be threatened. Their lives could be at threat. So I was staggered by that statistic. I was like, wow. The reaction within the article itself in the Liberian Observer is very much to calm that and to put it in perspective. The WHO, the World Health Organization, is quoted as saying, well, no, we can get this situation in control over the next 6 to 9 months. Sticking with Ebola, I saw a piece in The Guardian. It's by the Australian Prime Minister, the former Australian Prime Minister, Julia Gillard. If we have a look at that there, you can see she believes that a prediction of 20,000 people in around 20 countries being at threat in the long term. She sees that as credible. But there, if you can see the headline, she's really focusing on education. She says that Liberia has made great strides, but with this Ebola outbreak, it's really the whole advance in education in the country is now a threat because schools are closed. They'll be closed till the 1st of October, which seems like a short period of time. But she says in the long term, this closing down of schools is a real problem for the country.
Nick, there's been an interesting development in the run-up to the vote for Scottish independence from no less than Queen Elizabeth II.
Of England and also of Scotland. Queen Elizabeth was out at church on Sunday morning and came and talked to well-wishers. She's actually on holiday in Balmoral Castle in Scotland. And she said, well, you've got to think very carefully about the future. And that, you can see, is a Daily Record headline. The Daily Record being one of the most popular papers in the country. Let me turn to the Globe and Mail, a Canadian paper, which is giving some advice to voters, saying, from our example, from where we are in Canada, what we've had is our first Prime Minister was Scottish, our second was Prime Minister was Scottish. We know how you're feeling about independence. But the learning curve for the independence movement in Quebec is very much don't draw borders if you can help it. Don't create divisions if you can help it. And their recommendation is very strongly, Scotland, you must stay within the UK and make sure that you fight for change, just as you fought for change with the Prime Ministers of Canada, who were Scottish, the first one and the second one. That's their argument. Just to finish, let's stop with Alex Salmond, of course, who will be getting a lot of attention this week, the First Minister of Scotland. And he is pushing weights as far as independence is concerned. He's smiling, but also sweating. Will he have enough votes to actually push that bar up above his head and cheer for an independence victory for Scotland?
It is an interesting story. Thank you so much for that.